Today is October 6, 2024, and welcome to the 409th episode of the So Video Games Podcast. Here on the show, I talk about any game at all, including new stuff, old stuff, and anything in between. Me? My name is Brad Galloway. I am the one-man host of this show, and I'm also the editor of GameCritics.com, a website that uses the full range of review scores from 0 to 10, while also offering full accessibility information on every review we publish. Hello! Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. It's going to be a great show. Actually, very excited to record this one. Lots and lots of stuff to talk about. Not going to waste any time whatsoever. So, as per usual, going to kick things off with housekeeping, where I discuss tidbits, news items, industry happenings, and basically anything randomly game adjacent that has caught my eye in the last 7 days. First up, a real delight, folks. A real delight. Got a message from Christoph Minnemeyer, who is a developer. And to me, anyway, they are well known for developing Dungeons of Dreadrock. The original game debuted in 2022, I believe. First, it came to PC. It also was on Switch. It was absolutely one of my top 10 games of the year when it came out. If you have not played the first Dungeons of Dreadrock, it is a gem. Go back, pause the show, play it right now, buy it if you don't already own it, and just check it out. It is actually a real piece of genius, honestly, and I don't mean to puff up Christoph's ego or anything like that, but it is praise that is well deserved. It's a 2D top-down, kind of like an old-school 16-bit Zelda type presentation, and it's about a girl whose brother gets kidnapped by whatever, it doesn't matter. The story is not really the reason to play the game. The reason to play the game is that it's full of incredibly clever puzzles. So many brilliant puzzles, so many interesting puzzles that are kind of puzzles I have not really quite seen used very often before. Really kind of like lateral thinking puzzles, observation puzzles, memorization puzzles, like all sorts of stuff, but it's all wrapped up into this kind of like Zelda-ish looking sort of like shell. I had the most marvelous time with Dungeons of Dreadrock. I thought it was just brilliant stuff. So again, go play it right now if you haven't. It's on Switch. It's awesome on Switch. It's also on PC. I'm not sure where else it is. But Christoph sent me a message, and he was like, hey, yo, working on Dungeons of Dreadrock, Episode 2, The Dead King's Secret. So full disclosure, Christoph did send me a code to play the demo, or the work in progress, whatever, of Episode 2. Also, full disclosure, I have not had a chance to play it yet. So I apologize, Christoph. I meant to get to it, but this has just been a killer week. I have it. I have the code and everything. I haven't touched it yet, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't even need to play your game because I know it's going to fucking kick ass. It's going to be so fucking amazing. So, anyway, Episode 2 so far, according to Christoph, was nominated for a Gamescom award. Congratulations on that. It's going to be part of Steam Next Fest in October. And I guess I just want everyone here to know that this game exists. Go back and play number 1, so buy number 1, and then just keep an eye on it because, you know, I reviewed this game in full at GameCritics.com. You can go to that website, hit the archive, and you'll see my review. Ultimately, you got an 8.5 out of 10, and I kind of sometimes wonder if I should have given it a 9, but that's a discussion for a different day. But regardless, it is a fucking banger of a puzzle game. I strongly recommend it to anybody who likes puzzle games or who wants something that shows brilliant little bits of design innovation, or something that on its surface, and I think this is probably the hard sell with Dreadrock, is that screenshots absolutely do not do this game justice. If you look at a screenshot, you're like, oh yeah, it's like a 16-bit whatever. Moving on, I've already forgotten it. But you shouldn't do that. You really shouldn't do that. If you listen to this show, if you trust me, if you trust my taste in games, if you know the kind of games that I like, if you know what I prioritize when it comes to video games, this is absolutely one that is a must play. So go back and play number 1. You'll see what I mean. Don't be fooled by the unassuming screenshots and just the fact that sometimes it's really impossible to get certain aspects of an experience across in a trailer. Just watching the trailer, it's cute and it's fun. It does not sell what's great about it. But once you get your hands on it, I bet within a half an hour, you'll be like, oh shit, I can see why Brad likes this. It's cool as hell. So Dungeons of Dreadrock 2 is coming. I bet he probably would appreciate a wish list. Ding, you know, they do stats on that stuff over at Steam. And just keep an eye out and go play Dungeons of Dreadrock number 1. I guarantee you will not regret it. Up next in housekeeping is another game announcement for a game that I think is also fucking brilliant. Joe Richardson, who has been working on his Immortal John triptych. The first game was called Four Last Things. That's on, I believe, PC only. Now, full disclosure, I did not play that one. This game and Joe Richardson himself were brought to my attention with the middle game of his trilogy, The Procession to Cavalry. I fucking love that game. It is so amazing. It is so innovative and fresh and unique and funny and smart. Like I can't go on enough about The Procession to Cavalry. I fell in love with it like instantly. It is a point and click for people who do not like point and clicks. It's got some really brilliant puzzles, like amazing humor, really biting social satire. And the key, the hook to all of it, if you haven't seen it, is that Joe uses images from classical art, like Renaissance art. And so you've seen lots of these images before, like Girl with a Pearl Earring and a lot of the stuff that you might be familiar with from that time period. So he takes these, I guess, scans of the art and then like animates some parts of them. And it is just striking as fuck to look at that stuff. And then you go through this point and click game where it is irreverent AF. I mean, I remember playing Procession to Cavalry and it just blew my fucking mind at like how many rules he was willing to break, how many times he was willing to step outside the norm, you know? Like, for example, I will give you one quick example, and I'm not going to spoil it, but I will say that there are two paths through the game. One of them is a path that you would expect, and the other one is something that I would have really wanted to do in most point-and-click games, but developers never let you do it. And in this game, I tried it, and it worked. And I was like, oh, my God, I can't believe he did it. It actually worked. I seriously don't want to spoil that. I'm sorry it's so vague. But I think it's just something you have to kind of see for yourself. So I love Procession and Cavalry, and Joe is working on the third and final installment of his triptych. It's called Death of the Reprobate. Same visual style, I'm sure, same sense of humor. If you like point and clicks, or even if you don't like point and clicks, if you like really random and bizarre indie kind of things, kind of like Monty Python a little bit, just stuff that is just so strange and funny, and these wry observations and just everything about it. And on top of that, just the visuals are just so worth it, just to see these different paintings mashed up and placed in different parts of the screen, you know, elements taken from certain paintings that don't fit and they kind of like all go together. It's hard to describe how amazing it is, but go check it out. Four Last Things is currently on PC. I need to get to that. I forgot about it. Procession to Cavalry on Xbox, and it plays fine on Xbox. That's where I played it, and I thought it was just great. Also on PC. Check those out for sure. And then I will absolutely wishlist Death of the Reprobate. So give Joe a wishlist on that too, and that'll help him out. And then do that while you're doing Christoph's wishlist, and we'll help these good developers out, folks. We need more people like these two smart guys making smart games and just doing something different in the game space. I cannot support these two guys enough. Oh, also, just in case I didn't mention it, you can play the demo for Dungeons of Dreadrock 2 on Steam right now. It became available, I believe, today, I think. But regardless, go check it out. I believe it's part of the festival, whatever festival is going on right now. So check it out before it expires. Last thing that I'm going to mention here in housekeeping is not a game, but it's a movie. It's called Frankie Frico. It is the new film from director Steven Kostanski. Now, I have not seen this movie. I have not received a code or a screener or anything like that, but I just got an email about it, and I wanted to bring it to everybody's attention because, you know, I cover a lot of movies at the tail end of the show every week, and especially horror movies lately. We've been on a real horror kick. And the film that Steven Kostanski made right before Frankie Frico is Psycho Goreman. If you haven't seen Psycho Goreman, it is the best. It looks really hardcore and scary from like the little screen that you look at when you're looking at like iTunes or whatever, the preview picture, the tile or whatever you call it. The trailer looks really strange, but it's fucking great. Basically, it's like Power Rangers plus tokusatsu action plus like family humor plus like murder and like killing but funny, and just it's so random and strange. Basically, in Psycho Goreman, this alien comes to Earth to, I don't know, kill a bunch of people, and I forget what happens exactly, but these kids end up taking control of him. They get a, I don't know, device, or I forget what it is. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, they end up in control of Psycho Goreman, and they stop him from going on his killing spree, and they use him to get revenge on everybody that they hate. And it's so fucking funny and amazing. Psycho Goreman is amazing. So if Steven Kostanski can duplicate that same level of enjoyment and intensity with Frankie Frico, then I am 100% down. So just heads up that that's coming. Check out Psycho Goreman if you haven't seen it already. Put Frankie Frico on your watch list when it comes up. I am so excited. We had just the best time, and in fact, my family and I quote Psycho Goreman to each other all the time. I'm not going to say it here because it won't make sense if I say it now, but after you see the film, There's a part where they talk about hunky boys, and oh my gosh, it was just the funniest fucking thing. And we do say it to each other randomly throughout the house. And whenever we do that, whenever we adopt a line from a movie into our regular like repartee, we know that one is a winner. So Psycho Gorman, check it out right now. Frankie Frico, it's coming up soon. Okay, moving on, I'll be talking about questions that people have sent in here. In fact, looking at this script, I should probably write a little intro bit for this. I haven't written this yet. But regardless, I love getting questions from folks, whether it's hitting me up through social media, whether they email us directly, whether it's from the Discord. I'll give you all the information on all that stuff later on. You can reach out to me if you want to send in a question. But I will answer literally anything. It does not matter to me. It'll be about games. It'll be about food. It'll be about sex. It'll be about politics. I do not give a fuck. I will answer whatever you want. So if you got some questions for me, send them in, and I will be happy to share my opinion. And I guarantee it'll be a good one. So this week we got several questions, and thank you everybody for sending in the questions. I really appreciate it. The first one comes from superfan Elio Campitelli. What's up, Elio? Love you, man. Glad that you keep listening, and glad you send in these questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. First question from Elio says, "Hey, Brad. This week in my sign language class, we talked about all the different important days for the deaf community in September, and one of them was International Interpreter Day on the 30th of September, which is today in your time zone, I believe." So I've been holding on this question for a week. So cheers to you and your wife. I think you mentioned she's also a sign language interpreter. Yes, she is. And also a question related to sign languages. Are there gaming specific signs that you had to learn when working as an interpreter for the Adaptive Esports Tournament? Elio, good questions. Just a little bit of context for people who have not listened to the podcast regularly, or maybe you missed the episodes where I talked about it. Yes, I am a sign language interpreter. My wife is also a sign language interpreter. We are sign language experts. I've been in the field for almost 30 years. My wife has also been in the field for almost 30 years. She runs an entire agency. I freelance for specific things, and I also produce specific things. I mentioned last week I'm working on a big project, sign language related. So all that stuff. And one of the things that I do is I do sign for the Adaptive Esports Tournament hosted by Logitech. It's fucking amazing. They do it, I think, every couple months. We're just in the middle of the new season. I think we did the third episode where we did Golf with Your Friends, where we have a lot of gamers with disabilities joining in to play. And I'm on screen in the corner doing the sign language. So if you want to check out what I do, you can go Google that. I believe all the videos are up and you can see exactly what Elio is talking about. So good questions, Elio. So in relation to specifically what you're asking, are there gaming specific signs? So here's the thing. So globally, there is no one sign language globally, and doing sign language is not universal. So American Sign Language is different than British Sign Language, and that's different from Mexican Sign Language, and that's different from Japanese Sign Language. Now, there are some commonalities, right? Like, I think it's probably easier to learn a foreign sign language if you already know American Sign Language than if you didn't, right? So, for example, my wife and I just took an entire semester of New Zealand Sign Language. We took it just for fun. And it was different, super, super different than American Sign Language, but there were some commonalities, like certain concepts, certain things, like, you know, body language and stuff. And so since we already were experts at ASL, we picked it up pretty quickly, and I feel pretty comfortable. I'm not like an interpreter level in New Zealand Sign Language, but I feel definitely comfortable enough to chat with somebody or to, you know, talk about things and that. So there's no consistent thing around the world. You don't just learn sign language once and you can't just travel to like any country and automatically speak it, right? Just the same as like if you know, well, I guess English is a bad example because it seems like a lot of people know English. But if you were to say, for example, you know, you learn Spanish, you couldn't just like go around the world and talk to everybody in Spanish, right? So it's the same thing with sign language. Just because you know one sign language, you don't know all the sign languages. So the reason I bring that up is because there are no basic signs that are universal or consistent for video game stuff. And in fact, if you limit it to just America, there are no consistent signs. So this is kind of a long issue. I'm not going to get like super in the weeds here, but as far as I know, there's almost nowhere in America where American Sign Language is taught formally to students, which may sound crazy because if you are familiar with the American education system, most kids who go to public school will get like language and English and writing and all that kind of stuff, even, you know, before they leave the first 12 grades. And we talk about learning English in a formal way all the time. There is no such corollary for deaf kids. It's kind of weird because they kind of, I guess, just assume that deaf kids somehow like internally know sign language when they're born, and they don't spend a lot of time on formal education, which blows my mind because it's not true. Kids only learn what they're taught. They are not born in their DNA knowing sign language. And so the result of not having a formal nationwide system of teaching the language is that there are many, many different signs for many different things. So for example, strawberry is one good example. The word strawberry, I can think of probably 6 or 7 different ways to sign strawberry that are like radically different. And so if I sign it one particular way in Seattle, people might understand me. But if I sign it that exact same way, like in South Carolina, people will be like, what are you saying? I don't understand. So there's no consistent signs all across America. And it's even worse for like gaming. Now, many deaf people are gamers, and if you go to where deaf gamers are, I'm sure that they will develop their own signs, but there's nothing universal, right? So maybe you go to RIT, the Rochester Institute of Technology, which is a big deaf hub, and the people there are like real avid gamers, and there's like, Facebook groups for deaf players and stuff. I'm sure that they have their own sign that they have developed for themselves, but if you took their sign and tried to show it to somebody else outside of that group, no one else would know what they were talking about. So it's kind of awkward, and it sounds really weird and kludgy, but that is the truth. And so there weren't really anything for me. There weren't no signs for me to learn because, well, number one, there aren't any. But number two, like, they're also region specific. They're also group specific. And so it sounds kind of complicated and stuff. But here's the thing. So like, I am an expert not only in sign language, but also in video games. I've been in video games for even longer than sign language. So I think, 40? More than that, probably closer to 50, 45 years. Anyway, 45 years of games and 30 years of doing sign language professionally. So that's put me in kind of a unique position. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I do so much sign language for video game related things. I've done Microsoft announcements. I've done like other different video game announcements, the Logitech thing. I've done a few other things that are game related, and I keep getting these gigs. I've done something else I can't talk about too, but I keep getting these gigs because there's nobody in the same genre. Like, it's really hard to find a person who knows sign language really well, but also knows games really well. And you need both of those things in order to interpret effectively. So we don't learn anything about these games, but we actually make it up. So sometimes when we did like one entire season of Rocket League. As far as I know, there were no signs for Rocket League anywhere. I mean, not even how you even say the name Rocket League in sign language. It's not consistent. So we had to make up our own signs for what Rocket League meant. We had to make up our own signs for the action that happened during the game. Like flip reset was one that there was no sign that existed for that. And that was a move that happened all the time in Rocket League. And so we had to come up with a sign for that. Look, I'll do it for you right now. See? Pretty cool, huh? We also had to do for score and for kickoff and like all these things. They might have had some parallels in other types of games or like in other sports. I think if you talk about football, American football, that's pretty well established because I think a lot of deaf guys just watch football. It's a pretty common national sport. So you'll see a lot more consistency with something that's huge and nationwide like football. But for video games, no, that doesn't exist. So we ended up just having to make up our own, and we had to explain those on the show and like develop our own system and kind of figure that out. So hopefully that worked for everybody because there just isn't anything out there. So it kind of fell to me to invent that. And that happens a lot. Honestly, that's not a unique situation in sign language. There's many situations where the language just doesn't have a sign previously. And it doesn't mean it's not a language. I mean, ASL is its own language. It's not the same as English. There is no written form of sign language. And so it's all conceptual based and physical gesture based. So it has its own rules. And sometimes things just, need to be invented. So for example, when computers became really popular, which sounds like a weird thing to say, but I can remember when computers were not popular. It actually wasn't that long ago. Trust me. Like the sign router, there was no sign for router because no one dealt with routers. We didn't have routers. That was just a thing that you didn't worry about in your home because you didn't have a friggin' computer. And then when everybody started getting PCs and stuff or laptops or whatever, you had to start talking about routers. So people had to invent one. And so I didn't invent it, but somebody else, at Gallaudet University, the only university specifically for deaf people in the world, as far as I know, had to come up with a sign, and then that sign kind of made its way across the globe. And so the language just kind of grows, just like English, just like any other spoken language. I mean, when a new concept comes up, like the word fracking, if you're in America, before a certain year, you'd never heard the word frack. You didn't know what that would even mean, or twerking, that no one knew what that was. But then it happened, and then someone had to make up a word for it, and now we all know what it is. Exactly the same thing in sign language. So We didn't have words. We didn't have to learn anything, but we did make it up. And hopefully people will like what we did and spread it around. And if anybody knows signs that are related to gaming that I probably don't know, I would love to see those. And it's kind of just this like organic learning natural process. So that's what happened. And again, if you want to see me doing the adaptive esports tournaments, those are up. I think all of the shows, I believe, are archived. You can find those by going to Logitech and checking that out. I think they were all on Twitch originally. But it's a great event. I'm really proud to be part of it. And there you go. Let me know if I answered your question there, Elio. Hopefully so. Next up, Grub Hunter from the Gaming in the Wild Discord. And this is where I pause to do my weekly plug for the Gaming in the Wild Discord. You all know Gaming in the Wild, run by John over in Reykjavik. It's one of my favorite games podcasts these days. Listen to it religiously. His Discord, and I have one too, but we'll talk about that in a minute. His Discord is great. It's full of really awesome people, really cool, really chill, great space, great energy. I love, I'm in there all the time, like basically daily. So I talk to a lot of folks and they often shoot me questions, which is great. So costs $1 a month, which is money well spent, basically nothing at all. And you should all go over there and subscribe. Good times, good people. If you like this show, I guarantee you're going to like talking to those folks over there. It's good stuff. Anyway, Grub Hunter from the Gaming in the Wild Discord. What's up? What's up, Grub Hunter? He says, hey, really enjoyed the GameCritics.com podcast episode 30, where you talked about gaming as a hobby and the whole parenting thing. I was hanging on every word of that as it's stuff that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I'd be really interested to hear you guys returning to that discussion in a future episode. Cool. Okay, cool. Thank you for listening. And I got to say, I'm actually kind of surprised at how many people keep listening to the GameCritics.com podcast. Now, to clarify, in case you don't know, you are currently listening to the So Video Games podcast. This is my specific podcast. Before this podcast existed, we did the GameCritics.com podcast because my website is GameCritics.com. It's a long story, but we started that podcast in 2008, and it ran for a number of years, and then it kind of fell apart because, reasons, and it's hard to herd the cats, and people got busy, and people lost interest, and whatever. And I wanted to keep podcasting, and other people wanted to, do something different. So I started the So Video Games podcast to kind of differentiate it from the GameCritics.com podcast. But a lot of people really like that original show, which is cool. I had a great time doing it. I think we ultimately have 200 episodes of it. So, yeah, I mean, it was not weekly. It was like bi-weekly or, thri-weekly. That's not a word. Whatever. It doesn't matter. But regardless, it only ran for 200 episodes or so. I say only like that's a small number. That's still a large number. But it disappeared for a while because when we moved hosting from our previous host to our current host, a lot of the links broke and it was just like a mess. It was a big hassle. It was a problem. And we just didn't have the bandwidth to like bring all those episodes back over and like reactivate all the links and stuff. But we got so many people asking about it like constantly. Like for years, people would be like, "Oh man, where's those episodes? Where's the archive?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, okay, fine." And I started uploading them again. So I'm only up to episode 30. I'm trying to do like one a day, but then I get busy and I forget. Whatever. Anyway, so we just uploaded episode 30 of the original GameCritics.com podcast, which was from January 2010. That's when it was. So somebody was asking me, who was it? It was Narita Boy, also from the Gaming in the Wild Discord. Was asking what year was that from, and I believe it was January 2010. And I know that because the main topic of the show was Mass Effect 2 had just released, and if you check out the release date for Mass Effect 2, it is January 2010. So I guess let's circle back to what Grub Hunter says. In this particular episode of the GameCritics.com podcast, host Tim Spaeth brings up a topic, and in a nutshell, it's basically like, do you feel embarrassed for still being a gamer now that you're a grown-up? And also, how do you balance games and your family? And, is this something that we should be proud of or not proud of? Or how do you take this all? I'm not gonna go over the whole discussion. If you want to listen to that discussion, it's about the first 15 minutes of the episode, and I think it'll give you a pretty good idea of where I'm coming from. So in a nutshell, am I ashamed of gaming? No, it's just as valid as any other hobby anybody has. When you spend a lot of time with something, you get good at it, you become an expert at it, and I'm proud of being an expert in games, so that's fine. And something else that they talk about in that particular segment is parenting. So just to give you a little bit of background information. So Tim, the host, I loved him. He's like an amazing host. I learned a lot from him, and I really enjoyed being on the show with him. He's got a great radio voice, and he was always so ready with like a joke or like a quip or a yes and or something. Like, I mean, I try to do my best to roll with topics and stuff like that, especially like when Carlos was on the show. But man, I just like Tim was just the king of it. So That said, I think it's not incorrect to say that Tim often struggled with games in the past for various reasons. I'm not going to get into all that. And so that was, I think, where it was coming from, because I think most of us on the show did not feel embarrassed to be gamers. We did not feel like we were wasting our time. And one of the points I make is like, if you're a football fan and you watch every football game and you know every stat and you have all the jerseys, no one calls you a loser for that. They just think you're a real sports fan. That's very normal. And for us to know the director of a game or the artist of a game, or to know someone's gameography, maybe somebody would think less of us for that back then, but we certainly don't. I mean, it's just as valid as watching movies or reading books or anything like that. But you have to remember, when this podcast was recorded, as I said, that was 2010, so like 14 years ago. And I feel like things are just progressing and progressing and progressing. So I can understand why Tim might feel a little bit embarrassed at the time to say that he was still gaming pretty hardcore in his 30s. Because, it wasn't always cool. It didn't hold the same space in society that it does today. I mean, when I was growing up, playing video games definitely made you a nerd. You probably couldn't really tell people that you played video games because you would probably get beat up in school. The idea that you could find a girl or a spouse, if you're straight, I mean, if you're queer, then that's a different issue. But, the idea that you could find a partner that would think games was cool, totally unheard of, dude. Totally unheard of. And I get it. Tim was kind of in that same space. I was also in that same kind of space too, so like in my previous relationships, it was not something that was really looked upon and looked upon favorably. And so it was kind of like a dirty little secret. And I share Tim's feeling of like, oh, it kind of feels weird to be a gamer when your partner doesn't think that highly of it, and when society still doesn't think of it very highly. But times have changed. Times have changed so much. I think geek culture is really way cooler and way more acceptable than it's been ever. I found I got tired of my situation, right? I got tired of feeling bad about this because it was something that I loved. And I was like, the next time I get into a relationship, it's going to have to be with somebody who likes games. It's going to have to be. And it was. I did. My wife is a total gamer, hardcore gamer, and she does not look down on me because she plays games just as much as I do. We play Dark Souls together, and she's playing Caravan Sandwich right now, and, all this kind of stuff. She loves platformers, and she knows what a platformer is. So, I think society has changed, the world has changed, and I can get why Tim was wondering about being embarrassed about being a gamer, an adult gamer, and if you spend too much time with that. But I don't think so. So go back and check that episode if you want to hear the specifics of that. But I'm more than happy to talk about parenting and how that connects with gaming and stuff like that. So I have 2 kids. I don't talk about this stuff all the time, but my oldest is probably 24 and my youngest is just turned 15. And the 15-year-old lives with me, which is probably why you hear me talk about him the most, right? Long story. We're not going to get into it now. But, sharing games with kids is something they also talked about in that episode, and I think that's a really important thing to touch on. And it's going to be different for everybody, but we'll get to that in just a second. So just like a quick pin, before we move on to the next part of this, Narita Boy said, I listened to the same episode today. I'm curious to know the outcome, because in that episode, Tim, the host, said he was going to give up gaming for a month. Now, for me, as we talked about it, and as I'm sure you'll hear about in that episode, it sounded to me like it was coming from like a place of like shame or embarrassment or self-doubt. Like he didn't see the value in playing games. Tim kind of felt like maybe he was wasting his time, like it was taking away from other things. And so he was going to like just give up gaming for a month to see how his life changed, if at all. Did it change at all? Was it better? Was it worse? I'm not going to spoil that. And also Narita Boy says, please don't spoil that either, which I won't. But I will say that it does get addressed, and you will find out the answer to that soon. So to circle back to the original question, this dovetails with Shy Guy, who's also from Gaming the Wild Discord. What's up, Shy Guy? His questions say, the first one is a bit cliche. Hopefully the other one isn't as much. How do you balance the time demands between parenting and gaming? I know it's obvious that parenting demands trump gaming time. However, if you don't routinely take a little time for yourself, then you can't be at best for your family. I agree. The second question is, have you been able to use lessons learned through your kids' gaming experiences and incorporate them into transcendent lessons about life? For example, the skills needed to persevere through a difficult game translate to life's challenges in general. Games also remind us we have an innate need to have fun along the way, stuff like that. Okay, so these are great questions, which kind of circle back to the original stuff that I think Grub Hunter kind of like briefly touched on and that we talked about in episode 30 of the GameCritics.com podcast. So, okay, let me answer these specifically. How do balance the time demands between parenting and gaming. Okay, so a lot of that really depends on how old your child is, right? So when I was having babies with my wife, and she was there, she had a role in that. It wasn't just me. Want to be clear, give credit where credit's due. It really depended, right? So when my son, the younger one, was like an infant, there wasn't a whole lot of gaming to be had, right? So at that time I was working. We were a single income family. My wife stayed home and take care of the baby, and we did certain things that gave us some extra time, but also there just wasn't a lot of gaming, right? So when you've got a baby or a small tyke toddler or whatever, yeah, I mean, parenting is, yes, as much as I love gaming, parenting is more important than gaming, full stop. Like, there's no debate about that. So we would have like one of those little sling things, like a baby Bjorn, or like little baby backpack thing that you stick your child on. And we were firm believers in having your child with you all the time, because that is what humans did for millennia as a species, right? It's only recently, relatively recently in human history, that we start to think like, oh, kids need their own space when they're an infant, or kids need to be put down and let them cry it out. Let them think that they're abandoned, and they'll just scream their head off, and eventually they'll just stop screaming. Like, that's insane to me. That's insane that anybody thinks that, and that some fucking ass doctor from the 50s thought that was a good idea. I don't believe in any of that stuff. And we can get into this further if you guys wish. And in fact, I'd be very happy to talk about parenting, like full scale, full bore at some point. But like, we had, either me or my wife had our baby with us at all times, 24 hours a day. He slept with us in the bed. One of us had him on in the backpack, and whoever didn't have him on would take care of whatever. Like, I'd be at work and the wife would be wearing him around, and when I would come home, I'd put the baby on and the wife would take a break or whatever. And it led to a lot of really positive outcomes. We had a very quiet baby. He barely ever cried, was very, very chill and relaxed. I mean, I'm not going to say he never cried, but like, it was just not an issue, because he always knew he was with one of us. He was never left alone. He was very secure. And to be clear, just a slight divergence, that's not manipulation on a baby's part. He's a fucking infant. Like, it's like a baby. He doesn't know any better. They just want to be secure and know that their parent is around, just like every other fucking animal in the world, just like people have done for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. There's nothing weird about that. So he was chill. And so often we would just have the backpack on, and if he was napping or if he didn't have any needs at that time, we would just sit down and play some game. And I have pictures of me, like, with the backpack on, like in the front, and just playing whatever it was that day. And then, also we'd have like a boppy. I don't know if you know what a boppy is, but it's like a pillow in the shape of a C, and it's real big and floofy, and you put it around your lap. And so you can put stuff in your lap, and it's supported by this pillow. Go Google it if you haven't seen a boppy. I strongly recommend every gamer has one of these, even if you don't have children, because it's just amazing. Saves a lot of strain on your elbows and shoulders and your neck. It's so great. And in fact, now I've seen some that are designed specifically for gaming, not really designed for babies at all. But we'd have one of these boppies, and the baby would be sleeping, and we would just sit him on the pillow, and he'd be napping, and his head would be like in the crook of our arm, and we'd be playing game while we're doing that. And so like, whenever there was a quiet moment, we would just play some game. But then of course, when the baby needed something, game got paused. And it's during that time of life that you realize, I cannot play a game that does not pause. Any game that doesn't have a pause, fuck off and fuck you. Because life happens, right? And having kids is part of life. Not, for everybody. Not for everybody. No, not for everybody. For some people. But if you choose to have a child, and there's nothing wrong if you don't, but if you do, then that's going to be part of your life, and you got to figure this out. And you will learn quickly that you need to play games that have a pause. So that became the thing. Switch or handheld anything was great. Anything with a pause was great. Couldn't play any like, real-time action with no pause. Couldn't play Souls for a while or whatever. But you manage it, right? And as the kid gets older, you kind of just follow that pattern. Whenever the kid is not doing something that needs attention, and we were homeschoolers too, like we still are. So we spent a lot of time with our kid. Like, we didn't have like 8 hours a day of sending our kid to public school. So the kid was always around. We were always doing something very active and involved. And we just played when the kid was not busy. Now, does that mean we played tons? No. I mean, we probably played less during that period than the entire rest of our life, but that's just the way it worked, right? And then later, when the kids get older and you can incorporate them into play, I mean, that's a whole other thing. That's a whole other bonding thing. I've got loads of pictures of me holding like a 360 controller with my son, and him like, controlling the real basics of jumping and platforming. Some of his favorite stuff was on 360, the Xbox Live Arcade stuff, like Cloning Clyde, Feeding Frenzy, Explosion Man, that kind of stuff. Those are all really great fun games for kids to play because they're manageable, they're easy, they're simple. You can get a good connection between what the kid's hands are doing and what's going on screen. And when the kid finally realizes that, when they finally realize, oh, my hand is moving and something's happening on screen because of what I'm doing, that can be a great moment. Now, I'm not saying plop your kid in front of the TV 24/7, but, sitting on a parent's lap, you both sharing a controller, playing something simple, parent watching the child learn their hand-eye coordination is a thing, the kid realizing they have some agency in the world by manipulating this thing. It's great. There's lots of really positive experiences you can have. And so we would incorporate that, for reasonable periods of time or whatever. And then it just kind of just grew from there, but really, ultimately, it's always got to be the kid. The kid's always got to be the priority. And if the kid needs something, you just do what the kid needs and you just sacrifice your game time until they're asleep, or until the other parent is on duty or whatever. And so for me, often I would just sleep less, which is not really the greatest answer in the world. But, I loved playing games and I was editor of GameCritics.com that whole time. And I was on the podcast back then, the GameCritics.com podcast. And so, I would just stay up a little bit later and I would try to find whatever times when my son was sleeping to jump in and play some game. So that can be tough. And honestly, that's a really tough time in general. The kids need a lot of care and attention. Their sleep is erratic and that kind of thing. So it's rough in general. Trying to fit gaming in there is also rough, but you just do it. Just do whatever happens and just do what you can. Now that my youngest kid is now 15, I mean, I got to drag his ass off of games, right? Like he's playing too many games where I'm like, dude, do something else with your life. Go touch grass, read a book, go outside, anything, literally do something else. But we play games together all the time. We play Helldivers together all the time. We play Monster Hunter as a family. We're getting excited to play the new Monster Hunter Wilds coming out next year in February. We're all psyched for that. We're going to get 3 copies and all jump in together. We play lots of multiplayer stuff. And then also we're just in the same room together. So it becomes kind of a family bonding thing. How some families get together and watch TV. I mean, we do that too, but we'll play a game and he'll be playing Roblox and I'll be playing Dark Souls and the wife will be playing whatever platformer has just come down the pike, and we're all playing different things, but we're all in the same room. We each have our own console, we each have our own TV, because it's something that we do as a family, and we're interacting, we're social the whole time, we're talking to each other, commenting on people's plays, or oh hey, did you beat that boss, or oh hey, you just did that move, that's cool, congratulations, or oh you rolled credits, right on, and then we'll all kind of gather to watch a cutscene or something like that. So you just kind of incorporate it into your family if that's the kind of family that you want. And with me being the gamer that I am, my wife being the gamer that she is, it was kind of inevitable that our son would get into games, and he totally has. And so it just becomes a way that your family is, right? It's not that games take away from your family time. It becomes part of your family time. It's something that you just adapt to. It's just a thing. I can't even imagine not having games in our family because it's been such a core part of our entire family experience for so long. So hopefully that answers that part of the question. I'm certainly not taking time away from my family to do it. We're just doing it together and doing it, whenever we can. So organically. The second part of the question from Shy Guy: have you been able to use those lessons learned through your kids' own gaming experiences and incorporate them into transcendent lessons about life? So, yes and no, but I don't think in the way that you mean. For example, if I understand your question correctly, if the kid is trying really hard at a boss and can't beat the boss, but I encourage him to stay in it, and then he finally beats the boss, and then he wins and feels good about the accomplishment, does that same feeling translate to life about, oh, I'm struggling in life, I'm having a hard time riding a bike, and then I got to struggle with the bike as if I'm fighting a boss, and then I finally ride the bike just like I did with that boss? Will that work? That never happened. I didn't really have an experience with that at all. But what did happen was gaming kind of introduced a wide range of things in a way. So as I said earlier, we're homeschoolers, and as homeschoolers, we try to find ways to incorporate learning into basically everything. And games is so rich. So I think number one, the hand-eye coordination, that's just a given. Everybody knows that one. But also reading, so many words and so much vocabulary was introduced to my kid because he'd be reading an RPG, or he'd be reading the menu on an action game or something, or seeing dialogue that's subtitled or whatever. He learned to read from watching games because he was motivated and he wanted to know what they were saying. And also he just has this really great vocabulary because, games use a lot of words. He used a lot of $5 words, he used a lot of $10 words. And so he picked up all these things from games, which I think is amazing. He's also been exposed to a lot of history. There's lots of references or something that'll come up in a game, or some thing that'll happen. For example, he's playing War Thunder right now. Not my favorite game in the world, but whatever. And so he'll say, oh, there's this one tank. It's the T76592 from Poland, or what? I'm making that up. I don't know, whatever. And he'll go research it. He'll be like, oh, I looked up this thing and it was used in the actual World War II and it was used in this battle. And he'll like know all these things about what happened from that tank in the war, right? Because he saw it in War Thunder. Same thing with Roblox. Like he'll be playing Roblox, again, not my favorite game in the world, but like literally every fucking kid on earth plays that game. And so he'll see a character like a skin and he'll be like, Dad, who's a skin? And I'll be like, oh, it's so-and-so from, I don't know, like whatever. He'll be like, it's like John Travolta from Grease or something like that, something stupid. And well, he'll be like, what's that? And who's John Travolta? And I'll be like, okay, well, here's this guy, and here's what the movies he was in, and here's Grease, and this is what that movie was about, and maybe we'll go watch that movie. And so, like, lots of things that he's been exposed to have been directly because he saw them in a game. Like lots of different animals, or like lots of different concepts, lots of weapons, lots of things. And also when it comes to story beats, like a lot of times we'll be watching a story and he'll get the sense of like maybe one of the characters in the game is being mistreated. Maybe there's like a racial element or a sexism. Sexism comes up a lot in games, actually. Matter of fact, he was playing Dragon Quest Builders 2, and there was one section of the game where there's like one woman in a town, and the rest of it is these big burly guys. And like a lot of really weird, creepy, sexist stuff kind of comes up in that one section. And so he felt a little bit weird about that. So we paused, we talked about it, and we kind of talked about, you know, what's appropriate. And eventually that led to like other places, right? Like it leads to consent, it leads to appropriate relationships with women, respecting partners, and that, you know, like all this kind of stuff just ballooned out just from talking about games and observing games. So I don't think that like playing games didn't come through in that way, although I'm sure it probably could. But it opened up the door to so many other things that we might not have known or might not have been exposed to. So I think that games have tons to offer. But the important thing, though, is that throughout this whole discussion of the last like 9 hours or whatever we've been talking about this, something is like parental guidance, right? Like if you read the ESRB ratings or whatever, those guidances are there to kind of help a parent know what's in a game. But then beyond that, the parent has to like be with their child to play the game. So to let you know how that works in our home, I didn't play any games that were like M rated or bloody, or even some of the T rated games that I thought were too far. I didn't play those when my son was awake. So he didn't see those until he was much older and they were age appropriate, right? I never played Resident Evil in front of him when he was like 4. You know what I'm saying? No blood, no jump scares, nothing like that. We played appropriate stuff. And that can be a challenge sometimes. But then whenever he wanted to play something, either I or my wife was with him at all times. We were sitting there watching what he was playing. We were sitting there screening everything. So like whatever he knew from a game, we also knew because we were watching it at the exact same time that he was watching it, or vice versa. And so we had that shared experience, shared knowledge, shared context. And so we did not have a child who was going off and learning all these things without any kind of parental guidance. And so being involved with your kid is super, super important. I definitely recommend that for any parent in general, whether it's TV, books, sports, whatever. You should be there with your child because that way you have the same experiences. You can reflect on those things. You have the same background and context. You know what your kid is into. You know what they're doing. You know what happened because you were there. If at all possible, and I know it's not always possible because some parents got to work. Both parents got to work sometimes. When I was growing up, both my parents had to work. So I get it. It's not possible for everybody. But as much as possible, you should be sitting next to your kid, especially during the formative years, and taking in all of that knowledge. And whenever something happens, you can pause. And there was like loads of times we'd be playing a game and like, okay, pause. Let's talk about what happened. This guy got killed, but why did he get killed? Or what happened? Was that right or wrong? And we would talk about it and just have a quick discussion. Didn't have to be a 3-hour history lesson. We didn't have to do a term paper on it. We just talked about it real briefly. And by doing that, and by being involved, and by giving true parental guidance, that's really how you parent your kid. Like they learn from your example. They learn from your knowledge and your experience. That's where you really do the real learning. It's not from like sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day. So I think that is really the key part that we don't discuss very often, but parents have to be involved. And when it comes to gaming, it wasn't just send my kid off to the room so I can have an hour of peace to myself. It was, my kid's going to go play a game for an hour. I will go sit next to him for an hour. And then I will watch what he plays and help him through it, whether that's take over the controller for a minute or just offer my advice on characters or writing or design or whatever. You know, or sometimes like even something as simple as my kid getting frustrated in a game and me saying, well, this game is actually trash. And I'll tell you why. It's because they don't design these platforms well enough or the jumping doesn't quite work. And we'll talk about the mechanics of something, you know, to let them know that their experience is valid too. So there's loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of opportunities to incorporate gaming into your life as a parent and also as a family. And it doesn't have to be games or the family. It can be games with the family and in a healthy way, right? We're not all just like addicts, you know, playing MMOs until we die of dehydration or anything. We're like a strong, healthy family and we have other interests as well. And it's just gaming is just a part of that. So It might take some time, and it definitely helps if your partner's on board. I don't know that this would have all been possible if my partner had not been into games, because, like I said earlier, previous relationships, that wasn't a thing, and that was difficult. And I did not enjoy that, and I intentionally chose a partner who did like games so that we could do things like this, and ultimately, I think that is the right choice. So if you're a gamer, and you probably are because you're listening to this friggin' podcast, do yourself a favor and find someone who matches your freak, right? And that's like a whole other discussion. I love talking about relationships. I love talking about, interpersonal stuff. That's a whole other podcast. But like, just find out what you like. Find out what kind of person you are. Find somebody who fits you, and then do that. And sometimes that takes some doing. Sometimes we find ourselves in relationships where it's not quite a good fit, or our goals are not properly aligned, or maybe one of us is not fully fulfilled. And that's not a good situation for anybody, whether it's emotional, sexual, pastime, career, goal, or whatever. So basically find somebody who matches you as best as possible. And sometimes you got to grow that. And then you can have this happy situation. You can have kids together. You can have gaming together. That can all be part of it. It is not impossible. You can do it. I'm living proof. It might take some work, but you can get there. And I can also say that it's absolutely possible to have kids that have gaming as part of their life and still come out healthy on the other side of it. So there you go. I know that was super long-winded. And for people who don't give a shit about kids or families, hopefully I did not put you to sleep and you haven't run away from the show. Last thing I want to mention, this has nothing to do with anything, but I feel like I need to talk about it because I'm just kind of proud of it. People probably know, and if you follow me on Instagram, you absolutely know, I definitely collect action figures. I'm a child of the 80s when we were marketed to so hardcore. Every cartoon was basically a toy commercial, and I fucking love it. I have no regrets whatsoever. I love Transformers, I love He-Man, I love G.I. Joe, all that stuff from back in the day, Gem, anything, Brave Star, all that stuff. And so I collect action figures. It's one of my hobbies outside of gaming. And we just recently bought a house a while ago, maybe like 5 years ago. We were blessed. We were lucky. It was a lot of hard work. Not getting into that now, but it was a minor miracle that we were able to buy a house. It was not an easy thing. It was very, very difficult. But regardless, we got this house and I got a basement. First time in my life I've ever had a basement. Never had one before, but I always, you see them on TV. They're spooky and they're scary and there's always a killer down there and stuff. And I'm like, I don't want that to be our basement. I want our basement to be warm and dry and bright and colorful and to be a welcoming space. And we did that. Lots of light. It's dry down here. And I spent a lot of time fixing it up and making it like really a cool place to be. And it is. But in one corner of the basement, there was this really persistent crack in the cement. And I just could not get that fucker to stop leaking. In the part of Washington where I live, we get a lot of rain. And that's not true of all Washington. I know that people are still kind of thinking Seattle gets rain 24/7. Not true. Not even remotely true. But we kept having this leak through the wall. And I would try to patch it. And as, first time homeowner, I'm not like a mason. I've never laid drywall in my life or anything like that. And so I didn't really know how to patch it. So I was like watching a lot of YouTube videos, getting stuff, getting chemicals, getting tools, whatever, and trying to patch it. And I really wanted to put an action figure shelf in the corner of my basement because it's kind of like where my desk is. And I kind of wanted to look at it over there, but it was leaky. The wall was leaky and I didn't want to put a shelf there because it would leak behind the shelf and then it would make a big mess and might get the shelf wet and it would mold and it'd just be kind of gross. And I needed it to be dry and secure and clean. And so I patched it up. And then it didn't work. And the first year, it leaked through the patch and it was just a big mess and it was just a disaster. And so like year after year, I would try to patch it and it took a really long time. I mean, I guess I could have prioritized it more, but the problem was it rained a lot. And so I had a difficult time patching it because only certain kind of chemicals can patch when the thing is actually leaking. And it was just a big mess and I didn't want to hassle with it. So I had to wait until the dry period, summertime, to try to patch it again. And I would put a patch on there and then I'd wait for the rainy period. And then when the rainy period came, I'd be like, fuck, it didn't work. And so like this went on for like 5 years. This is year 5. And so I was like, okay, enough is enough. I gotta patch this thing, enough. And so I got a bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of stuff. I watched a bunch more videos. I got a bunch more tools and I'm like, fuck it, this fucker's getting patched now. And so I did it a couple months ago during the summer when it was dry, patched the whole thing up, went over it again, did the best job possible. I feel like I really went above and beyond and I like finally got it fixed. And you know what? I think it's finally fixed. I think after all these years of that leaky ass corner, I think it's dry. It's clean. The patch seems to be holding, which I'm very proud of. And I actually finally put my shelf over there and I'm looking at my shelf right now and I'm just so fucking proud of it. It's a small thing. But it's like triumph of the human spirit, I guess, and to kind of circle back to Shy Guy's question, I guess maybe I learned a lesson from gaming, right? So I've beaten Sekiro. I've beaten Dark Souls, and this wall was the Dark Souls of my basement, I guess. Like, I just could not defeat this fucking patch in the wall. Like, it leaked and leaked and leaked. So I finally got there, finally defeated it. Yes, patch achieved, or whatever FromSoft wants to put on the finishing screen there. And I'm really happy. I just wanted to share that with everybody, a little bit of joy in my life. It's a small thing, but the ability to have a wall that doesn't leak and to put a shelf right where I wanted it to go because I could, I don't know, man. Small victory. Just made me feel real good. So anyway, there it is. That's all I've got for housekeeping. Now, before I get to the main portion of the show, I just want to remind people you can help support this very podcast, the cost of running this podcast, by going to patreon.com/the So Videogames podcast. Every little bit helps, even $1. And the cost of running the show never goes down. What the fuck, folks? Also, huge thanks to all the Patreon supporters who are already putting their money where their ears is. Every little bit is absolutely appreciated. Also, heads up, there is a So Videogames Discord, which any listener is welcome to join free of charge. If you want to join up and continue the conversation after the show, talk to me about my shelf, talk to me about action figures, you want to talk about parenting, relationships, anything you like, shoot me an email and I will send you the details. You can join the Discord and we can just talk about it offline. It's just cool people. It's closed space. It's not like the wild and woolly corner of the internet. It's a really nice area, and I think I got some good folks. So if you want to join up, if you're listening to the show, you're probably a cool kid, come join us and talk about that stuff. Again, free of charge. Okay, main portion of the show. Let's go. Got lots of stuff to talk about this week. Got a whole bunch of games to talk about this week. Starting off with Astrea, 6-sided oracles. Oh, and before I get into the games, as I say every week, let me check the script real quick here. Yes, every game except for one, I received a free code from the publisher or the developer. So in compliance with FCC regulations, full disclosure, just so you know where I'm coming from, all of the games except for one, I did get a code for, and just know that. Just know that information. Okay, first up is my one and only circle back for the show. Circle backs are where I want to circle back to a game I have discussed in greater detail on a previous episode, but I don't want to cover the whole thing over again. I just want to update you about where I've been, where I've gone to, how did it go, did I like it, did I not like it, did I finish, did I not finish, that whole thing. So my only circle back for the show is Astrea 6-sided oracles, which I covered last episode. This is a 2D painterly style deck builder that uses dice instead of cards. I liked it last episode, but I had some issues with the readability of it and how easily information was surfaced, and I wasn't quite sure about how I was going to feel about it, because I do like deck builders, I do like roguelikes, and it seemed to be really kind of up my alley. So I did keep playing after the show last week, and I did complete my first run all the way through. You have to finish 3 worlds and fight the boss at the end of that, and then you unlock the next character. So I did one full run with the first character, who was an owl. The next character is a shark. The owl has a special ability, the shark has a special ability. Kind of like Slay the Spire in some ways, where you have a character who's got their own jam and you got to play them the right way. So I finished the run and I thought that was fine. Unlocked the new guy. I think a lot of my feelings from last week, though, kind of held true. One of my issues was that the graphics were pretty chill, almost too chill. The art style is very beautiful and painterly, but also it lacks a certain urgency. And as I watched it, I just noticed I would feel very calm and relaxed, which is good. But also I need to not be taking a nap when I'm playing a game. And I felt like it was just too, I don't even know. I'm not even sure what I'm even trying to say. It's just something about it just didn't have the feeling of I'm in combat. I'm doing a fight. I gotta survive, strategy. It just was really beautiful, looking at a beautiful watercolor painting. And I just felt so relaxed and chill. It wasn't putting my head in the right space. And I just needed a little bit more pop, a little more verve from the graphics. It just wasn't quite getting there for me. Also, I think my complaint last week that the game has too much information that is not really easily accessible, that didn't really change. So what I mean by that is there's lots and lots and lots of different dice, and each dice has a different face, and these are represented by symbols, and there was loads of symbols, and it was hard to remember what the symbols meant. And so every time I rolled the dice, I would have to cursor over every single dice to remember, oh, that's right, this one did this. Oh, that's right, this one did this. And then the enemies had some, and there was lots of statuses, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't remember which status does what. And I just think that the game, it's a good game. Don't get me wrong, this is a good game. Astrea is a good game. I think it makes a lot of good choices. It's got a good core, But I think number one, the graphics just too mellow, but also the systems. You need to, like, at a glance, see what's going on. Like, whenever you roll the dice, and you got to know what the enemy's doing, got to know what you can do. It's got to be surfaced really, really well. And I think games like Slay the Spire really nail that, where you can just take a look at the screen and you pretty much know what's going on. And of course, you can mouse over things or cursor over things to see if you need a refresher. But in general, it's all surfaced right there. You know who's attacking who and for how much and what's going to happen next turn. And Astrea makes good strides towards that, but I just don't think it gets there because there's too much going on. There's too many systems, too many statuses, too many dice, too many icons. And I just ended up really like every turn reading everything on the screen over and over and over when I really want to just be playing it. I want to be in the zone. I want to intuitively know what's going on, and it just didn't work that way. So I think it ended up being kind of like really slowly paced and kind of like a lot of like what's going on the screen, what's happening, who's going on here. And that's just not the zone I want to be in. I don't want to have to spend that much time trying to remember these new symbols and these new statuses. So I think ultimately it's a really good game, but too slow and a little bit too dense for me. And I wish they had better visibility about things that are happening on screen and a little bit more pop in the graphics. I think it would have worked. So finished that first full run, unlocked the new guy. I played a little bit with the new guy and I'm like, okay, I get it. It's a good game, but like this just isn't where I want to be. And it's not changed enough with the new guy. So I think ultimately I like Astrea, didn't love it, but if you are in the market for a roguelike, something like Slay the Spire, deck builder, kind of a thing, it's absolutely a good choice. Just know that you're going to have to probably spend some time like really like digging into it, and it's not just like everything on the surface as many of them are these days. So overall, though, still liked it. Just not the game for me right now. So that was Astrea, Six-Sided Oracles, playing it on Switch, and a great fit for the Switch, by the way. I think visibility was not a problem in terms of the Switch's screen or anything like that. It ran fine. So it's good on the Switch if you want it on the Switch, and that would be a good choice for it. Next up, Metro Quester Osaka. Playing this on the Xbox. I believe it's on PC as well. It might be other places. This is a pretty hardcore, old-school style dungeon crawler. And if you like those, I'm talking like old school, like, simple graphics, like really basic graphics, a lot of stuff presented through text, no combat animations. You're just seeing like, Warrior A swung for 10 points of damage. Slime strikes you for 6 points of damage, that kind of a thing, where a lot of it is presented in text and you're kind of looking at a general top-down, like 8-bit style map when you're walking around. If you like those things, this game is actually fucking awesome. I don't know that I am personally in the market for this right now, but boy, howdy. If you like that style, it kicks ass. It really does. I think it nails all of the old school tropes. If you're old enough to remember when games like this were the norm, you will be in for a real treat because it absolutely scratches that itch. It checks all the boxes and it knows what it's doing, right? Like it knows how those games worked. You can choose a party. I think you have up to 5 characters. You can assign 3 attacks at a time. It's all done through menus, just like it was back in the day. You see this little, the right-hand side of the screen, about maybe like 2/3, maybe, well, I don't know. 75% of the screen is taken up by the map. The other 25% is divided between your character portraits, different information. You can always pause to do like a map and stuff like that. But you're like looking at your little character, walking around square by square, searching out things, reading text examples of what happens. And when you get into combat, you will they'll talk about like what's happening on the screen, line by line going through it. So this is definitely like one of those things. And if what I'm saying doesn't make any sense to you, like you'll have to like Google it and find out. This is such an old style of game. I'm like actually struggling to kind of think about like what kind of game I could compare it to, because I've played games like this before, but it was like 30 years ago. So like just you got to go back, way back when. And this is the kind of game that was really popular on PC at that time. So if you like this kind of game, it's really awesome. I will say, just like those games back then, this game is hard as balls. I think I got party wiped in the very first encounter, and I was like, oh, this is how it's going to be. Is this what's going on? Okay, I got you. And no, I didn't have it. No, they kicked my ass, man. I did not make it. Did not make it very far. This game is hard as fuck. In addition to the combat, there's like multiple statuses, multiple spells you have to learn. There also is a food limitation. You can only move as far as you have food. I believe you get like 100 pieces of food at the time. If you get more food, you can keep going. When you run out of food, you go back to home base and restart. So it's just like really, really super, super old school. God, I wish I could. I'm trying to think of like what I can even compare this to. I have to apologize because I mean this is such an old style of game. I can't even come up with a comparison for it. But just take one look at it in screenshots, and if you're old enough to recognize what it is, you'll be like, "Oh, it's one of those." And if you are not old enough to recognize what it is, you'll be like, "What the fuck is this?" But trust me, it's really well done. It's really faithful to the old school style. It knows what it's trying to do, and it does it really well. But just know that these games are very like intense. They're very intense. They require a lot of concentration. You will get your ass kicked many times. You'll have to like go and go. I mean, I'm thinking like old school wizardry, maybe like super old school wizardry, or maybe like, no, I don't think Ultima, maybe wizardry, probably something like that. But like, anyway, if you like that kind of hardcore flavor, kick you in the balls and laugh at you while you're down on the ground kind of gameplay, I think this is a really good one. I think it's a great example, and I appreciate that this thing even exists, right? Because it's such kind of an oddity in today's world where we're doing AAA bleeding edge graphics and all sorts of player accommodations. This game does not believe in those things, and that's fine. If you know what you're getting into, that is what it is. And I'm sorry to be so abstract, but like, if you know, you know, and if you don't know, then you're probably better off not going there. But check it out. And for all of you old heads out there who know what I'm talking about, if you're nodding when I'm kind of babbling on right here, it's worth a look. It's definitely well done. If you like that thing, I think acquired taste is a fair way to describe it. And it will certainly not be for everybody. But if you like those screenshots and you've played a game like this before, it is your jam. That is Metro Quester Osaka, playing it on Xbox. I believe it's also on PC. Next up is the Plucky Squire. This one has been very long awaited. Lots of people very hyped for this one. It debuted a trailer a while ago. It must have been at one of the, I don't know, Nintendo Indie Directs or maybe one of the PlayStation. I don't know where it was, but I remember when it showed up in one of these announcement shows, people went bananas because honestly, the trailer is pretty fire, right? So this is a game. It's kind of a blend of things. It's a 3D kind of, I don't know, action game, but it's also kind of a 2D 16-bit presentation, kind of a mashup. So you kind of go back and forth between two modes where one is kind of like flat on a 2D plane and the other one is in 3D. You can pop back and forth eventually once you get the power unlocked, which happens pretty soon. Basically, it's like a storybook. It's the story is actually called The Plucky Squire, and you are the main character. I'm not going to get into the minutia of the story because it's not really that important. But basically, you play this character and you go on this quest, and it's really cute, presented like a kid's storybook. Kind of looks like the art style of like Captain Underpants or Dog Boy or something like that, roughly. And so it's very colorful and neat. And you go back and forth between the modes. When you saw it for the first time in that trailer, it was pretty amazing because it looks cool just in the 2D part of it and colorful and bright, and it seems very attractive. And then when the character popped out of the page and started walking around, I mean, everybody's like, oh shit, that looks amazing. And it does. It looks really amazing. But I think this is one case where the idea and the concept didn't quite come together. So basically, when you start playing the Plucky Squire, you start off in the 2D area. They set up the world. You're in a storybook, etc., etc. And it's just fine. Like, I think the combat is like super basic, and I think there's way too much talk, way too much talking. They stop you every 5 seconds to say a little bit about the world, or to give a joke, or to introduce a concept or something. And it's just like, it stops so much. It feels like every time the game starts getting going, someone stops you and talks about something. And it's not really like super funny. It's not irritating either, but I just kind of wish it would just stop. So there's that. Then once you get the 3D aspect of it, where you can pop out of the page and walk around, like for example, your world is a storybook on a desk, and you do the 2D part in the book, but then when you go 3D, you get out of the book and you can walk around the desk and do some stuff on the desk, and then you get back in the book when you're done. Cool idea, cool as shit, and it looks amazing when it happens, but you know, the 2D action is just pretty straightforward, real basic combat, some real basic puzzle solving. And then when you get to the 3D part, it's kind of the same thing. Like, it just feels very basic and simple. Doesn't feel like a lot of the concepts are really fully fleshed. Now, full disclosure, I did not finish this game. I honestly don't think I even got further than level 3 or 4. I got into it and I'm like, okay, like I feel like it's interrupting me all the time. It's talking way too much. And when I am playing, it just feels pretty straightforward and not really super exciting. It doesn't really feel like they leverage the idea very much, and not a lot is happening that's very exciting. So I think it's very fun looking. I think it's very exciting looking, but like when you actually get into it, it just doesn't feel that captivating to play. Now, I don't know if they intended this game to be for kids, like, I guess, well, so I guess I'm kind of of mixed minds about this, right? Like, if it's for kids, like if this was aimed at like 10-year-old kids or something like that, I think the problem is that there's way too much talking, because I know for a fact, having been a parent of 2 children, as you may have heard earlier in the show, kids don't like to be fucking interrupted, and kids don't often like to read a bunch of text. I realize every kid is different. I'm not speaking for all of kiddom, but I can speak for my own 2 kids. They do not like that much talking, or at least not to be interrupted that much, right? So like, I don't think that pace works for kids, and you're not honestly doing that much. It doesn't feel like there's really a lot happening. You're kind of going from section to section and doing a little bit here, a little bit there, more talking, a little bit here, a little bit there, more talking. It just feels like it's kind of shallow, and it doesn't really have a lot underneath the hood once you get past the initial wow factor of the character jumping off the page. And it is wow, but it just takes more than that, because the newness of that wears off after like 5 minutes. And then once your brain comes to grips with the fact that you have a 2D plane and a 3D plane, your brain's like, what's next? What are we supposed to do next? What do we do with this information? And it just doesn't feel like a lot. So I think it's kind of like too slow and pokey and talky for little kids. But if it's supposed to be for grown-ups like me or someone else like me, like, not nearly enough action, not enough to it, not deep enough. So I feel like it's kind of caught in this middle ground where they had this amazing idea, and then I guess, for me anyway, I mean, I don't mean to be insulting. I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings or anything like that, but I just feel like after playing it, I'm like, is this all there is? Is this it? Like, it just doesn't feel like it really goes anywhere substantial with this idea. So I have to say, for me, it was a bit of a miss. I was very excited. I know a lot of people were extremely excited for the Plucky Squire. One of probably the most anticipated titles of the year after that trailer dropped. I think that's not in question. But now that it's here, I don't really hear a lot of people talking about it. I feel like people have forgotten it already, because it just didn't really make much of a splash. There wasn't much substance there, you know? And I think regardless of what your hook is, if it's not like a deep hook, a lasting hook, it's just, I don't know, it's just not a lot there. So anyway, that was a miss on Plucky Squire. Like I said, I got to chapter 3 or 4, and I had seen enough. I didn't really want to keep playing. So there you go, Plucky Squire. That is a thumbs down from me, or I don't know, 3/4 down, not all the way down. It's not terrible, but I certainly didn't want to play it anymore, so I guess take that for what you will. Next up is Planetiles, Planetiles, playing this on the Switch. It's also on PC, and it might be somewhere else. This is a cute little puzzle game with kind of a, I don't know, global geologic theme, I guess. Basically, you have a series of planets, like a whole bunch of planets, and you start off with the very first planet has a giant, like, chunk taken out of it, or I guess a chunk of it is blank. And so that blank area is divided up into squares, blank squares, and then they give you a little island to start with, and the island takes up 1 square. And I guess I should explain a little bit better. You're looking at the planet like it's a globe, like you're kind of looking at a globe at a distance, as if you were in space and you're looking down on the whole planet. You can rotate the planet around whichever way you want to spin it, but really you just need to focus on the places that are blank. So the first planet, like I said, a big chunk taken out of it. You can kind of almost see the entire chunk just on the Switch screen. You put your island down, and then they give you more blocks as you go, one at a time. And the only hook to this is that you have to attach land to other land. So let's say, for example, the first block you get is just like 1 square. You put that in the middle. The next block of land might be a desert in the shape of an L, like an L Tetris block. You can't just put it anywhere. It has to be touching the island in order for it to go. And so that's kind of the hook, is you eventually want to, I guess ideally, fill up all of the squares to make sure that there's no blank spots left on the globe. So it's kind of like Tetris, but you can take as much time as you wish. There's no time pressure. And you can just really, like, you know, look around and think about things and think about ultimately where the best place for each piece would go. And then you got to put it down. But again, the only concern being it can't just be anywhere. It's got to be touching another piece of land. And so you got to think ahead a little bit. The pieces are, of course, in different shapes, like L shapes or like a square or a rectangle or a C shape or anything like that. Lots of different shapes. And then you also get bonuses based on if you put a certain number of the same tile together. So you can put tiles anywhere you want to. There's no real limit as long as it fits. But if you put, for example, I think it's 9 forest tiles together, if you somehow get all the right pieces and you put them in the, like in a big 9x9 block of forest tiles, you can then click on that block and it becomes like mountaintop or something like that. Or if you have like, you know, 9 deserts and you put them all side by side to make a 9x9 block of deserts, and you click on it again, it'll be like giant dune or something like that. And it gives you like a points boost. And some of those things have actual abilities. They can offer different effects on the landscape, and they can give you like little things. There's also little bonuses you can get by switching your tiles around. You can have the ability to you have like little perks also that you can earn, and you can turn those off and on in a menu, so you can kind of change your play experience a little bit. It'll be like, oh, if you match a certain type of tile, you get more of a bonus, or you can get more starting tiles or something like that. So you can kind of turn the perks off and on in the menu before you start a match. And then you go into one. And again, no time pressure. So you're taking as much time as you like. You're just really kind of thinking about it. So it's kind of like Tetris, but with a little bit of like landscaping thrown in. And it's also like no time pressure. Just pretty cerebral. I guess if we all had as much time as possible to think about Tetris, we would just get Tetris all the time, and we would never fail because we could just slowly think about where to put things. So it's interesting to play a game like this without the pressure of like, hurry, 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 because the clock is counting and more pieces are dropping. It's just like, no, nothing's dropping. You take a piece when you wish and you put it down where it goes. And then you kind of just, just enjoy that for what it is, which I do think has some appeal. So overall, I think it's pretty cool. I like the idea a lot. I think it feels a little bit clunky in kind of rotating the planet. You have to kind of rotate it on the right stick, and you move your pieces with the left stick. I'm not sure what I would do differently, but I know that when I'm playing it, it feels a little bit clunky. I feel like perhaps the planet should be rotating automatically based on where my piece is, if that makes sense. It feels like managing the planet's rotation is a little bit more than I want to be doing, or maybe it should be automatic somehow. So that's a little bit of a weirdness thing that I noticed. I will say also the graphics are a little bit basic. I think maybe some of that has to do with the Switch, but also it could be zhuzhed up a little bit. But then again, you're probably not coming to a game like this because you want like high-end snazzy graphics, right? You want the puzzle play, which ultimately I think is pretty cool. If you want something that's very chill and very relaxing and something a little bit different from the norm, if you want to like fit these pieces together, but you don't want to be rushed and you want to just kind of like look for bonuses and kind of just be a little bit more strategic about it, like strategic Tetris plus gardening, I think it's pretty cool. Planetiles is pretty cool. It's not what I expected, but I had a pretty good time with it, and I would definitely recommend it to people who want something, chill, cerebral Tetris plus plants. So there you go. I had a lot of fun with it. Planetiles, I think, is great. Let's check the script here. Only one more game to discuss, and that is Kunitsu-Gami, Path of the Goddess from Capcom, and it's on Xbox Game Pass. So this is the one game this episode I did not get a code for because it's quote-unquote free on Game Pass. Now, you may remember a couple episodes back, I played the demo of this. They released the demo, and I wanted to jump in. And this is kind of a weird one. When you take a quick look at it, it's not quite easy to see exactly what it is. And full disclosure, I did not care for the demo. I was like, oh, I don't think this is for me. I don't care for this very much. But then, I'm a big Capcom fan. Like, if I had to pick a publisher / developer, I mean, Capcom very likely would be the number one pick for me. I don't know that, like, my favorite game of all time comes from Capcom. It doesn't. But if I had to pick just one house who was, like, consistent, who always delivered something that I liked, who always had great art, and I really value great art. If they had cool ideas, cool characters, it might just be Capcom, right? And so I'm like, okay, I didn't click with this demo. I don't think I'm going to like it, but it is hitting Game Pass, so what do I got to lose, right? Except for time. And time is a concern. I mean, time has value. But I decided to go back into the full version, and I got to say, I'm really glad that I did, because after I started the full version, I was like, oh, okay, actually, no, I do like this. I do think this is very cool, and I did not get a really effective impression from the demo, which is very common, and that's exactly one reason why I wanted to come back to it. It's very, very easy to get a bad impression of something from a demo because they got to rush you in. They know you're only going to play for a few minutes. It's hard to get a lead into something. It's hard to set things up at the proper pace. And so, I think it's honestly a crapshoot whether a demo will properly sell the ultimate game or not. And in this case, not. So I'm really, really glad I came back to it. So what is Kunitsu-Gami, Path of the Goddess? Well, I'm glad you asked, folks. All right, so basically, if I was to like really sum it up, I think it's a real-time... No, I'm not going to describe it like that. I think it's kind of like a tower defense. I think it's an active tower defense. And those are actually my favorite kind of tower defense. Really the only kind that I play. So basically you play a spirit guardian who has been summoned by a goddess. Now this game is Japanese AF. Like this whole thing is just like 100% Japanese myths and folklore and stuff like that. They've got like the Oni demons, and they've got all sorts of traditional clothing, and it all just looks like, if you know a lot about Japanese myths and folklore and legends, which I don't. I know a little bit, not a lot, but this all just seems like totally that category of stuff, which is pretty cool. I feel like I'm learning a little bit here. There's lots of bits and pieces you can read up on that give you information on stuff. So if you want to like learn actual something, like better yourself a little bit, they give you the opportunity to do that, which is great. But basically, you play this spirit. This goddess is on the top of a mountain, and the mountain becomes corrupted by evil. And so she needs to go back down the mountain and purify it, clean it up, like make it nice again for the people. So she summons you, her spirit guardian, from, I don't know, the ether or whatever. And she is going to slowly dance her way from the top of the mountain all the way to the bottom. And along the way, she will be purifying and cleansing every notable area on the mountain. So that's the basic premise. But how this boils down to in practice is that you start a level, and it'll be like, Forest Glade or the Secret Cave or the Meadow or something like that. Doesn't matter. You're in a level. The goddess will be at one end of the level. And in the beginning, she's always on the left side of the screen, and you kind of see it from a 2D perspective, even though this is not a 2D game, which is actually one of the weird things about it. But she starts over there, and she will not move forward unless you carve a path for her. And whatever path you carve, she will follow it. It takes resources to do that. And in order to get those resources, you have to either collect them from the environment, they're going to scatter it around, or kill monsters. And when they drop these resources, you collect them. So every level is kind of like basically like the beginning of a tower defense game where you got to set up your defenses and stuff. But in this case, rather than setting up towers, you are freeing innocent villagers and townsfolk who have been corrupted. They turn into like little meat cocoons, which is gross. And it looks gross. And so you run around, you free them from the cocoon during daytime. You start every stage in the daytime. You free as many people as you can, and then you collect whatever resources are available, and then you kind of get the lay of the land, and then you lay your spirit trail down, and then she starts dancing along that line, and she dances really slow. So that's kind of like, you got to like keep her alive and safe until she gets to the end of the line. So you've only got like daytime to get stuff done. As soon as nightfall happens, the end of the level on the right side of the level, there's like an evil gate all the time. That's what you're ultimately going to be cleansing. The evil gate will open up and like a bunch of demons pour through, and they will like make a beeline for the goddess. And so she cannot defend herself. You need to actively run around and kill demons. And in order to help you, any villagers that you free during the day, you can give them a job. If you don't give them a job, I think they just stand around and look scared, which is probably what I would do as well. But if you give them a job, you imbue them with some of your spirit power, they can do different things to help defend the goddess. So the basic class is like woodcutter, where it's like a guy with an axe. Then you get like archer, who has less power than an axe, but they can shoot enemies from afar. And then you get like the ascetic, where they can do a field, like a protective field that slows enemies down and gives your other guys more chance to kill them. After that, you get a thief who helps you earn more resources. You get a sumo wrestler who kind of draws aggro from enemies, and so forth and so on. And so you got to get these villagers erected up around your goddess as quickly as possible and put them in a strategic place. These kind of act like your towers in a tower defense. And then you got to last all night long, defend your goddess, fight them back, kill them, move your villagers around as necessary, make sure that no demons are getting to the goddess, and then you push on. As soon as day breaks, all the demons fall down dead, and you can keep progressing. So that's the basic path. And I think that's a pretty good formula for active tower defense. After you get past the first level, like things kind of like every level has a little twist to it, right? Like there's always something to keep it fresh. In one area, well, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's some of the secrets, because it's kind of cool when you get there, because they do different things that you're not expecting. But they do little iterations on the formula just to keep it fresh. Nothing huge, but you'll see like little twists like, oh, I haven't done this before. Or, like maybe you get a branching path. Or one of the earlier changes in the game is that it looks at first as though it's going to be 2D left and right, even though the graphics are kind of 3D modeled. But pretty quickly you realize, oh, wait a minute, I can actually move the whole camera, and I can flip the entire level to be looking down on it from a god's eye view rather than a side-on view. And that changes things because sometimes there's other paths that you don't notice, and sometimes the monsters will like be coming from a direction you weren't expecting them to come from. So you really need to like move your camera around, even though initially it seems like they're going for a 2D presentation. I think they just like trick you. They lull you into this false sense of security. After each level, you fight a boss, and the bosses are traditional Japanese monsters. You'll see like the famous, evil Japanese centipede that's always in a lot of Japanese themed stuff. There's like a big Oni type guy. So you do these kind of things, and you use different villager abilities to beat them down. So one thing that's cool about this is that when you earn resources, you can give your villagers different level ups. I think each one has a maximum of like, I want to say like 8 level ups or something like that. More health, more damage. And they do a couple of extra moves. Like, for example, the woodcutter can chase somebody down rather than just being simply defensive. And I think his ultimate move is he does like some kind of like supercharged axe swing that shoots out a blade or something like that. Energy blade or something. And the thing that's nice about this is that you can take those power-ups back anytime. So let's say, for example, you've got maybe 4 or 5 different classes of guys. And in the previous level, you really needed the woodcutters a lot. But in the next level, you have a lot of flying guys and you really need those archers. Well, if you invested heavily in woodcutter, no problem. You can get all those investments back and put them in the archers just for that one level. And then in the next level, if you need your woodcutters back, take those investments back again and give them back to the woodcutter. So they don't penalize you in any way, which I think is awesome. They really let you move your resources around. You can play with how many guys have which power-ups and how much they're powered up. And you can mix and match to the best of your ability. They also give your character lots of different abilities you can mix and match as well. You have different super moves you can choose. You find these trinkets that give him like, better health regeneration, better attack, better movement speed. And you can apply those as needed. I think at the current time, I think I have 2 open slots, and so I can choose any 2 powers, but I've got more than that. Obviously, you can unlock more slots as you go. So there's room for customization of your minions. There's room for customization of your actual character. And then between levels, you can go back to places that you have liberated, and there are little construction projects you can do. So you can assign villagers over there, and the more projects you do, you get more upgrades, more resources, more little abilities you can do, and you just kind of keep progressing like that. So overall, I think this is a really cool spin on active tower defense. And I say active because your main character, the Spirit Guardian guy, you can run around with him and you can do things, right? You're not just passively watching the towers you place defend. Because I hate that kind of tower defense. It makes me feel really frustrated because even one mistake with where a tower is placed and then all of a sudden the whole thing goes sideways, you got to start from the beginning. I like tower defense games where you have your towers, but also if you fucked up something or you made a mistake or something unexpected happens, you can just jump in and actually kill that thing on your own and take some action and run around, and it feels way more active, not just a passive experience. So I think this is an actually very cool spin on the active tower defense genre. I think the artwork and character design is really, really cool. Lots of masks in this game. All the villagers wear masks. You wear a mask. There are some cosmetic options. And I think just the vibe of it, is great, and I really dig it. I'm going to pause for just like 1 second here. I know that people listening to this podcast probably don't know, but through the magic of podcasting, it has probably taken me 2 days and I think 9 different attempts to get this podcast done. And that ringing you heard just a second ago was my veterinarian calling because I had actually dropped my dog off 12 hours ago before I started even getting to the game section of the podcast. And it just so turned out that he had a really bad reaction. He almost died because of the anesthesia. And so I was waiting for... I didn't realize this at the time, but the vet called. I literally just drove down there like immediately, got him sorted out, and we came back. And my dog, Kimchi, is now back home safe and sound. So, yes, I try to remember what I said about Kunitsu-Gami. I can't remember because my dog almost died. I'm feeling a little bit traumatized right now. So, regardless, whatever I said, let me just wrap this fucking show up. I can't remember ever having as much difficulty getting a podcast together as I have with this one. And my brain is kind of scattered right now. So Kunitsu-Gami is great. I like it a lot. I'm going to try to finish it. I'm making good progress. I think overall it's a really cool spin on active tower defense. Oh, yeah. And just quickly, the downsides. I think the only real downside so far is that the game sometimes struggles with visibility because I'm not sure exactly what they were going for, but like I said earlier, it's 2D. It seems like it's going to be a 2D game at first, but then they realize, no, actually you've got full 3D control. And sometimes it's kind of weird to kind of get the camera around. I'm struggling a little bit with the camera, trying to find optimal viewpoints, especially when you're getting into the fighting stages where you need to protect the goddess. But I mean, it's pretty minor. It's not really that big a deal. And honestly, and this is not an insult or not an insult. This is not a criticism at all. But the combat so far has not been like super, super hard. So I guess I should probably knock on some wood, right? I think some of the bosses have been a bit challenging, but when you're in the actual stages themselves, I think it's pretty straightforward to get a good lineup of guards going, and you can always retry stuff. So I don't think it has not been like really, really difficult so far, or at least not as difficult as some tower defense games can be. Hopefully that will continue because I'm really having a blast with it. I enjoy just kind of going through it and seeing each new stage and seeing the new tricks that they bust out for each stage. And there have been some pretty cool ones. So that's really my only thing. It's just like the camera control, I think, is kind of a weirdness to it that I don't think they quite solved. Oh, also, I will say that it's been difficult to get an optimal controller setup going. I really don't want developers to get in the habit of using the L3 and R3 sticks. Like when you click a stick down, that shouldn't be a core function. And so this game wants you to jump and interact and then also dodge. And just with all the different stuff you're doing, it seems like there's just like one function too many. And so I put, actually, you might think this is crazy, but I put jump on the left 3 controller stick clicking, and thank God you can remap the controls, because honestly, I'm not really jumping that much. I'm kind of wondering why they even put it in. It's not really been that useful. So I put that on L3 because I barely use it. And instead I use the interact button a lot. That one comes up more often than jumping does. So I've been a little bit kind of struggling with the controls. Not really struggling, but there doesn't seem to be one optimal solution. I wish I could kind of I don't know, I just think they need to remove like one option and then everything would be fine. But those are really super minor quibbles, and overall I really like Kunitsu-Gami a lot more than the demo would have led me to believe, and I'm really digging it. So there you go, Kunitsu-Gami, Path of the Goddess. Good stuff. It's on Xbox Game Pass. Try it out for quote-unquote free if you've got Game Pass. Otherwise, I definitely think it's worth a shot if you like active tower defense, or if you like stuff steeped in Japanese lore, or if you like Capcom's output. Really enjoying that one so far. All right, folks. The game portion of the show, oh, thank God, is finally done, and I can soon get this podcast in the can. But I do have a few non-game things to mention this week, as per usual, generally movies and TV, and my wife and I have been on a real horror movie kick lately, so we're going to be focusing mostly on that. Just to start, a quick statement that I think most movies these days need to be 90 minutes. My wife and I have been really watching quite a bit of movies lately, more than we usually watch, just because we need the stress relief and the downtime. And man, the number of movies lately that have been like a really tight 90, like a lot of movies from the 80s and 90s, I'm like, okay, cool. They got in, they did what they needed to do, they got out, it was great. I like that. I think 90 minutes, honestly, is just right for most movies. I'm sure there's exceptions, but every time recently we've seen something that's been like 2 hours, I'm just like, ugh, they could have cut 20 minutes out of that, or these scenes didn't really further the plot, it just felt kind of egregious, or it just kind of like went somewhere and didn't really bring a lot to the overall viewing. So I'm a real firm believer that 90 minutes is the sweet spot for most movies. I mean, if we're doing like a huge Infinity Gauntlet extravaganza, you know, okay, sure. If we're doing some kind of like huge sci-fi opus, if we're on Arrakis, or if we're, I don't know, whatever, something huge and big and spectacle, I mean, okay, maybe. But even those, I think a lot of them can benefit from being a little bit tighter. So 90 is kind of where we're at, and I think that's kind of the sweet spot. So the other thing I want to bring up before I get into the actual movies is we just recently got a 4K TV, the first 4K TV we've bought. We are slow adopters because honestly, I just kind of don't care. I think pictures on less than 4K TVs have been fine, and I haven't really been jonesing for anything really cutting edge. But we went to the store the other day, and there was like this gigantic, like huge sale. We ended up getting a 55-inch TV, 4K. It was for like $198. I mean, it was like, what? That's so cheap. And we had been talking about maybe getting another TV anyway, and so it was like, it was such a low price for such a big TV and a good quality TV. We couldn't say no. So we brought it home, and it was like, wow, this thing is sharp as fuck, and I can totally see some different, I mean, my life would have been fine with the old TV we had. It was no problem. But I mean, I could clearly see a step up, right? Like it looks sharper, it looks better. But I did notice this weird thing. I don't know if you've noticed this, but it's called the soap opera effect, where modern TVs have this kind of like motion interpolation thing. Some companies call it motion compensation. And the effect that it has is that it takes a TV show or a movie and it makes it look like you're watching a low budget soap opera because the picture is so sharp and clear that you are seeing details that you shouldn't be seeing. So if you've ever seen like Days of Our Lives or General Hospital from back in the day, you know what it looks like. It kind of looks like a cheap telenovela or an old Doctor Who episode or like Red Dwarf or something, where the camera coverage was just like so raw that you could see lots of stuff that like you probably shouldn't be seeing. So for example, we were watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which I'll circle back to in a minute. And the picture was so clear that you could see that the consoles that the people were on, like in the show, like on the control room, you could see the knobs were like glued on and shit. And like Odo, the shapeshifter character on Deep Space Nine, the lines of his makeup were like super mega clear. You're like, oh damn, that looks just like he's wearing a bunch of makeup. And it didn't look like that before. It looked like he was, you know, a Star Trek quality alien, but when you could see all the details, you could see the seams on everything. You see the edges on everything. It made it all look kind of cheap. And like, we watched Cheers from the 80s, and it was like bizarre how clear that got. And it was so clear to the point that it felt like we were actually on set while they were filming, but it was not good. It was not great. We could see the blemishes on Ted Danson's face, and we could see the makeup lines on Shelley Long's face. And it was like, we're too close. Like, we're not supposed to see TV like this. We're not supposed to see movies like this. So it was really kind of wigging me out. We put up with it for a couple days, and I'm like, is this just how it looks now? Is this what TV is? I don't know that I like this. And come to find out, lots of people don't like that. It's a very common thing. Like I said, it's called the soap opera effect that people actually don't like. I don't like it. I want to go back to the old kind of TV. And so it is, you can turn it off. If you go to your settings, you look for motion interpolation, motion compensation, or anything like along that line. Basically, every TV company has their own term for this kind of effect, but you can usually turn it off. So I went to those settings, turned it off, and boom. I get a really nice picture, but it doesn't look like a soap opera anymore. I don't see the makeup lines anymore. The consoles on Star Trek don't look like cheap wood anymore. And I'm like, okay, cool. The suspension of disbelief is back. I can immerse myself in the show and not get caught up on like how cheap things look. And I'm really grateful for that. So if you are bothered by that, like I was bothered by that, you can turn that off and still enjoy a really good crisp picture on your TV. Okay, so now the actual movies themselves. Detention from 2011, starring Josh Hutcherson. This movie is fucking wild, dude. It has so many ideas crammed into this movie, and it feels very much like a movie that the people who were in it really wanted to make. And I'm pretty sure that Josh Hutcherson was pretty instrumental in making this. So I wasn't his biggest fan in like the Hunger Games, because whatever, I wasn't really a big fan of that franchise. But now that Josh has been out doing his own things, I bet he's actually a pretty cool dude. He's been involved in this movie, which I thought was wild. He was also involved in Future Man, which is fucking awesome. I think that maybe he's a pretty cool dude in disguise, and now we're only just now finding out. But this movie, I can't really give away what it's all about. But basically, these kids are in this school. Weird things are happening. And it's like, there's time travel. There's a serial killer. There's a stuffed bear. There's all sorts of like weird, like just weird stuff, like tons of movie references. It feels like a bunch of people got together and we're just like one-upping each other with references to other things. And it all came together in this wild swirl of like really frenetic ideas. The movie, it moves at a breakneck pace. The dialogue is breakneck. It's so fast and it just comes like hot and heavy. And it's just a really, really cool movie if you are into the vibe. And my wife and I were. We thought it was really cool. So Detention from 2011 with Josh Hutcherson was fucking amazing. Really great stuff. But like wild and offbeat. So don't be expecting just your average movie. It fucking goes places and it's so weird. And it's absolutely not afraid to drop an idea when it's done with it, even though you think they couldn't possibly drop it. Yeah, they fucking do. They move on. It's bizarre. Next movie, One Cut of the Dead. Oh my gosh, this one was fucking amazing. Oh my God. People told me for a while it was good, right? And when you watch the trailer for One Cut of the Dead, I don't want to say anything about it. And if you're listening to me, just trust me. Don't read up on it. Don't do any research. Just go fucking watch it. Because if you watch the trailer, it's basically about a low-budget Japanese zombie movie that is filmed in one cut. It's called One Cut of the Dead. So they get a single camera and they follow these actors through the set that they're in. They're zombies and people escaping from the zombies, zombie survival. And they do one long continuous cut, which is really cool. And I'm not going to say anything else about it, except that there is other stuff in that movie. And that's all I will say, because I was not spoiled when I watched it. And when I watched it, I was like, oh my God, what? I can't believe this is happening. It was brilliant. It was a brilliant fucking film. Now listen, full disclosure, I'm not a big fan of like one cut attempts. Usually I feel like it's kind of forced. I'm not a fan of like found footage. And, you know, I don't mind low budget films, but like this seems like even lower than low budget. But like, listen, trust me. If you like the kind of horror movies that I like, if you've been listening to the show and you know what me and the wife have been watching, if you dig those, or if you just like really unusual cinema with some great fucking ideas, trust me, just watch One Cut of the Dead. You will not be disappointed, I swear to you. There's stuff going on here that it's even when I think about it, it's fucking awesome. I love that movie. It was so much better than I thought it was going to be. So definitely check that out. One Cut of the Dead. 5 stars, dude. Like fucking across the board. It was amazing. Next movie, 1408, starring John Cusack. Love me some John Cusack. This is a Stephen King story adapted into a movie. It's about John Cusack is a guy who investigates paranormal phenomenon, and he goes around the country to like haunted places to see if he can find ghosts. He's not really a believer, so he's kind of debunking stuff. He goes to room 1408 in this one hotel, and it is just a really wild trip. That is definitely a haunted room. That's not a spoiler to say that. Samuel L. Jackson is in that movie as well. A couple other actors that you might know. Not going to spoil it, but haunted shit does happen in the room. It is a wild, really trippy ride. I think John Cusack does a great job. And it's great because he carries most of the film on his own. I mean, there are other people in the movie, but large stretches of the film are just him in the hotel room dealing with shit. And so he, like, you know, he carries like 3/4 of the movie all on his own, which must have been a pretty heavy lift, but ended up being great stuff. We thought it was really cool. And something I didn't realize about this film, there are multiple endings, and it really depends on where you get your movie to see which ending you have. I believe there's at least 3 different endings that I know of, and I didn't realize that until afterwards, but we watched it and I'm like, huh, that was weird. And then we went back and did some IMDb, and I'm like, oh shit, there's like 2 other endings to this, and it's totally like a crapshoot. Kind of like Clue, the movie. They filmed like 4 different endings to that, and the ending you got really depended on which theater and which part of the country you watched it in, so you could have a totally different ending. Same thing here. 1408 has multiple endings, and if you watch it on Hulu, might be different than if you watch it on Netflix, might be different than you watch it on iTunes, which is really kind of wild, right? Let's see. Next movie, Renfield, with Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult. Oh man, this was a good one. I didn't realize this, but it was written or produced or something with Robert Kirkman, who is the guy doing The Walking Dead and Invincible. Renfield is about Renfield, Count Dracula's familiar, his human assistant, who gets, you know, errands done for him during the daylight hours when Dracula's in his coffin. They update it to modern times, and they go to Louisiana because reasons. Aquafina is there. She is the police officer who kind of helps out. This movie was just like really fun because Renfield doesn't want to be under Dracula's thumb anymore. He's been his servant for like 100+ years. He's got partial vampire powers because Dracula empowers him to get the work done. So he's got some powers, not nearly as strong as Dracula's powers, but he's got some. And he is just tired of doing his bidding. He wants to like get out of this and reclaim his human life. So it's really cool and really fun. It's very funny, very wink, wink, nudge, nudge. They spend a lot of time making jokes about relationships and stuff, but in a good way. I think it really works. And the action sequences in Renfield are just like way over the top. It's like Mortal Kombat, the movie. Not going to spoil it, but like tons of blood, tons of like just dismemberment and maiming and some really cool practical effects that are just really funny looking. Enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was quite good and very humorous. Really liked it. Next film is called It's What's Inside. It just debuted on Netflix like this week. This is another fucking... In fact, this has been the week for like crazy ass films. It's What's Inside is so wild and gonzo and unusual. I don't even want to spoil it, but basically there's a group of friends from high school who go their separate ways. They come back together because one of them is getting married. So they want to have like a fling to kind of relive the past. They get together at this faraway mansion, and one of the friends brings a suitcase, and there's something inside the suitcase that nobody expects. And when they bust it out, things kind of go crazy. So I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to say anything. But this movie was really, really wild. They had some really unconventional camera shots. They had like multiple layers to the story that were going on. They did many things through filmmaking to kind of string the story together because there was a lot to keep track of. And man, my head was like spinning at certain points in this movie, just like, oh my gosh, what is happening and what's going on here and what did we just watch? And it was pretty wild. It was pretty wild, but I really liked it a lot. I thought it was pretty exciting, pretty unusual, doing some crazy stuff, and I thought it ended really well too. So it's What's Inside, definitely good stuff, but maybe bring a piece of paper and a pen and a notebook to kind of keep track of things because there's a lot going on in that film. Final movie is Fido. This is a pretty recent one. This is a kind of like it's got like a 50s, faux 50s vibe. Carrie-Anne Moss is like the star. Billy Connolly is also a star. I did not recognize him though. He looks quite different. But this is a story where if you assume that in the 50s radiation from space comes down and every dead person on Earth becomes a zombie because of this radiation, people have to adapt. They set up safe zones. So it's like, imagine like Fallout where they take the 50s and kind of spin it. So this is like that same kind of vibe where it's like a 50s world, but zombies exist. They put collars on the zombies to turn them into docile like slaves basically, but it's like a comedy and it's also like heartwarming. It's like a family film sort of. There's some pretty funny things that happen in this movie, but it's basically like a satire about women's equality, about the nuclear family in the 50s, about what life would be like if zombies were real. Do they retain any humanity? It was a good film. I heard it like completely tanked at the box office, which makes sense because it's not the kind of thing that you would probably want to pay a bunch of money to see on the big screen, but I thought it was quite good watching it at home. I think we watched it on Hulu and it was really fun. If you like Fallout and if you like zombies, like mash those two things together. And that's what Fido is all about. It's not nearly as scary as the title card would lead you to believe. So those were the films we watched this week. Like I said, we watched a lot of movies. One final thing to mention. I mentioned a while ago, and I mention it so often, that my family and I are going through the Star Trek canon. We finished Star Trek The Next Generation a while ago. We watched Picard a while ago. And now we are watching Deep Space Nine. I've never seen it before. This is the first time I'm watching it all the way through. And man, it's fucking good, dude. It is really good. So we're in season 5 out of, I think, 6 or 7. I think maybe 7. And we're almost to the end of season 5. And in season 5, there's been this like long running story that one of the characters, the shapeshifter Odo, he's very like tightly wound. He's very keep everything under his shirt. He's not open with his feelings, and he's been burning this torch for another character, Kira Nerys. She is the security officer. She's a Bajoran from the nearby planet, and they're friends. But like Odo is like madly in love with her, but he can't let it show because he's just really like insecure, and he doesn't know how to approach women, and he's a different species, and so he doesn't know how that's gonna go. And Kira kind of likes him, but he's not really making a move, and so it's kind of just like a friend zone situation. And things kind of happen. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but like, so we're like in season 5, and we've known from like season 1 that Odo really like, he really is like deeply in love with her. And we just got to the episode last night where things happen. Not going to spoil anything, but I'm not going to spoil how it happens, but something happens, and they finally get together. They finally, after 5 seasons of this TV show, move things forward just a little bit. It's like, it's really sweet. It's really well done. And honestly, it's like, I gotta say, it's one of my favorite episodes of the entire series. Just finally seeing Odo drop his guard and be vulnerable, and seeing Kira finally see him in this light and realizing how much he loves her, and them just kind of getting together and just, you know, realizing that they really should be together and they're perfect for each other was just like so great. And how they came together was just a wonderful, wonderful, really story. I will say it involves the holodeck, and it involves a character that we've never seen before, but it was a great character. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more of this character. So it was the introduction of a new character. This new character brings the two of them together. And after 5 years, it's got to be one of the longest running, like, unfulfilled romances in TV history. And it was absolutely worth it. It felt natural. It felt real. I just was like, I was so heartwarmed by seeing what happened. And I was so gratified and happy for them both. And I know it's a fictional show. God damn it. I know it's not real. But man, it just came together so wonderfully. That's going to go down as, I think, one of my favorite romantic moments on TV of all time. I thought it was just so well done. So hats off to Odo and Kira, Renee Aubergenois, who unfortunately has passed away, and also Nana Visitor, who plays Kira. Such a great job, and all the writers did such a great job with it as well. So, all right, folks, after 97 stops and life events and my dog almost dying and multiple days passing, this is a show. Boy, what an epic recording. On my side, anyway. I know it sounds like probably just a normal podcast to you, but for me, it's been a real journey. I've grown as a person. I've lived. I've loved. Here we are now. Before the closing music, I would love for you to leave reviews, share the show on social media, and most important of all, please recommend So Video Games to your friends, because nothing beats good old word of mouth. Also, if you want to support the show and help with the cost of writing this podcast, you can do that. Go over to patreon.com/the So Video Games podcast. And if you want to join the Discord, that is absolutely free of charge. Just hit me up and I will hook you up. As always, I would love to get your questions and comments. Hit me up in the So Video Games Discord or email me directly, sovideogamespodcast@gmail.com, or hit me up on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. It's my name, BradGallaway, all A's, no O's. And that's going to do it for the epic lifelong journey in episode 409. Thank you again for joining me here on the So Video Games podcast, and I'll see you next week.